picture this. Royal Air Force F-35s scream over the North Sea. Radars are locked on to Russian Su-57s and vice versa. Missiles are streaking across the sky. The sky is erupting in a battlefield for air supremacy. Nope, this isn't Top Gun Maverick. It's the UK's jets backed by NATO facing Russia in a high-stakes showdown. Welcome to the Max Afterburner channel. Today we're tackling the big question. Could the UK hold off Russia in a massive air war? And with tensions at a boiling point, this subject is more important than ever. And today I'll be using my fighter pilot experience to break down 3 matchups of NATO's fighter jets versus Russia's, and I'll dive into how the UK and NATO could counter Russia in an air war. We'll do a hypothetical attack where Russia attacks the UK and how that response would go down after the attack. So stay to the end of the video as well, because I'll also break down a chart that shows the different beyond visual ranges from an unclassified source of the missiles that would be fired from Russian jets to the UK's jets. And then I'll also show a chart about the different radar ranges that the different jets would have as they faced each other in a beyond visual range scenario. So if Russia attacked the UK would have to respond. Their F-35Bs would attempt to slip back through those Russian defenses like they're dodging attacks from a Stage 5 Klinger.
Oh my God, don't ever leave me.
Ever.
Good, because I'd find you.
So in this scenario, could the UK, backed by NATO, hold their own, or would Russia's numbers overwhelm them? And things are heating up around the globe. Russia's ramping up their bomber flights near UK airspace, and NATO's boosting their air defenses 400% after recent Russian missile tests and cyber attacks. And could a conflict spark off of the Ukraine-Russia conflict? If that spills over, could that be something that now arrives directly into a NATO country? We'll be diving into all this throughout this video, so lock in, let's roll. So here's how the hypothetical attack on the UK from Russia might go down. It would be an air assault targeting bases in the UK like RAF Lossiemouth, infrastructure in London, or naval ports like Portsmouth. Russia launches from Kaliningrad 700 miles away, or Murmansk, hitting the North Sea or Baltic theaters. 295 Bear bombers and Su-35 jets would deploy FAB-500 glide bombs with a 40-mile range and KH-101 cruise missiles with a 1,700-mile range, aiming to cripple UK defenses. Drone swarms would also attempt to overwhelm the UK's radars. What would be Russia's goal? Their goal would be to disrupt NATO's front lines and test UK resolve. The RAF's Quick Reaction Alert Forces, or the QRA, would scramble Typhoons from Lossiemouth to intercept Russian bombers and cruise missiles over the North Sea. In the Baltic, RAF Typhoons from Amari, Estonia would join NATO's air policing, intercepting Su-30s that would be probing NATO airspace. During this hypothetical attack, the UK's Sky Sabre SAM system would fire to life. So these would be focused in on drones, close in. They'd be shredding 80% of the drones and missiles that would be attempting to attack the UK, but some would potentially get through. And that's where advanced technologies like some of the different anti-drone technology from Anduril would come in. These different drone technologies can take down drones in massive numbers. They use kinetic options, and then they also use microwave and radar options to scramble signals going to the drones and take them down without ever having to touch them. The UK would also use Starstreak missiles that have a Mach 3 plus capability, and they'd be used to nail low-flying threats like helicopters or drone helicopters, and these have been proven to be effective in Ukraine. NATO's Patriot systems would also fire up, and they would add 100 nautical mile range plus support. They could intercept those KH-101s, but Russia's barrage would continue. It would be fierce, but the limitation would likely be that there wouldn't be a lot of coordination. It's essentially like Russia has star quarterbacks, like their systems are decent, but then the team can't actually talk to each other and they don't have a playbook. So it's essentially like you got Kobe Bryant out there launching Hail Marys. Every now and then one of them is going to go into the basket, but Russia doesn't have the teamwork needed to really put up a united front for a long period of time versus a country like the UK. The UK's radars would be backed by NATO AWACSs, and they would detect threats 200 miles plus out. They could spot threats extremely early and then take evasive action to take them out. The UK's SAMs would hold the line, but their limited missile stockpile would be a strain under a prolonged drone attack from Russia. NATO's Dutch F-35s and Norwegian jets would step in to help reinforce the attacks on the UK, and that could tip the scale. Could the UK's defenses stand firm with these extra F-35s? It would definitely be a formidable enemy going up against Russia's jets like the Su-30 or the Su-57. So Russia would be attacking with Su-57s, Su-35s, MiG-31s, and massive amounts of drones. The Su-57, Russia's stealth jet, has a 1,200 nautical mile range. It has a Bayelka radar that sees 150 mile miles out, but only about 15 of these things are operational. It's got a 0.1 square meter RCS, so that type of an RCS or radar cross section, again, see, I'm helping out with these acronyms, that's detectable at 50 nautical miles by NATO radars, maybe even a little further away. The Su-57 is also going to pack the K-77M missile, and that has a 120 nautical mile range. Russia's also going to use Su-35s. The Su-35 can reach 1,500 miles per hour, and it's got an Irbis-E radar that can see out to roughly 100 nautical miles. And then it's going to launch R-77-1 missiles that are said to have a range of 68 miles. Russia's also going to use MiG-31s, which are likely built for intercepts or deep strikes, and those can carry R-33S missiles, which can fire at targets about 100 miles out. But they're limited to 5G maneuvers, which is not very good for a missile going up against a 9G capable fighter jet. But Russia's jets and drones are going to aim to overwhelm UK's SAMs with speed and numbers. But the F-35 stealth is going to be like Neo dodging bullets when it comes to dodging those Su-57 missiles. Russia's Su-57 radars likely aren't even going to know that the F-35Bs are there. So those F-35Bs would be at the point of the spear when it comes to doing DCA or defensive counter-air missions. The Sky Saber's precision and the Starstreak's speed will try to counter those low-flying Su-35s that might be coming in a way that the UK doesn't think they would. Likely fighter jets would attack somewhere above 30,000 feet, but those Su-35s and the drones might try to intermingle and fly in different formations where the Su-35s are integrated with the drones, trying to dodge the radars of the UK. And who knows, Russia could get extremely wily and position S-400 SAM systems on container ships, and those have 250 nautical mile ranges. They could position those close to the UK and basically use them as a defense system as they try to pull the UK's F-35Bs or other fighters into the reach of those S-400s. The UK would also be utilizing Patriots. Those are said to have over a 100 nautical mile range, and those would definitely bolster the UK's defenses against that Russian threat. But the limitation of the Patriot is the missiles. The radars are extremely good, but the limited stockpile of Patriot missiles definitely limits the Patriot's effectiveness. So something that is more capable of shooting down dozens or hundreds of drones is more likely what the UK will be focused on in the near future. So what's the overall verdict? Well, the UK's SAM systems could definitely hold their own against Russia's jets in short bursts. And then you team that up with the F-35B. The F-35B is awesome because it can essentially talk to all those different SAM systems on the ground, and they can act like a football team that's targeting specific areas of the field, or a defense that is set up to protect certain areas of the field. So that net of the F-35 would be really hard for those Russian jets to penetrate. So even if Russia is successful at some of these strikes on ports or air bases, the UK is going to have to respond and strike back. They're going to have to proportionally show Russia that they can do the same thing in the hopes of keeping Russia from doing it again. How would that play out? Let's talk about how the UK would strike back. Because the UK can't just sit back and watch. They've got to wag that finger and say, not today. And that finger happens to be the F-35B. So the UK's F-35Bs and Typhoons would launch from UK bases, or they would use bases in partner NATO nations like Poland. The UK would probably focus on targeting Russian air bases in Kaliningrad, somewhere relatively close to London. F-35Bs with 600 nautical mile combat ranges and 0.001 square meter RCSs would do their best to slip past Russia's radars. They'd be delivering Spear 3 missiles 80 nautical miles out to hit command posts and runways. Typhoons would be hitting Mach 2. They'd be firing Storm Shadow missiles from 155 miles away, hoping to stiff arm and remain clear of those Russian S-400s. They'd be like sharpshooters using precision to strike specific strategic targets in Russia to deter further Russian attacks on the UK. And those Storm Shadow missiles strike with precision. They're like a sharpshooter who never misses, or they're like that friend who's just oddly good at leisure sports. You haven't been to the batting cages in like 6 months. How are you hitting home runs? The UK's Typhoons would be trying to swoop in and crush Russia's jets, like Hangman being the savior in Top Gun Maverick. NATO's French Rafales would also team up with the UK's jets, and these Rafales now, due to recent testing, have shown that they can carry nuclear cruise missiles. So that might keep Russia guessing. Having Rafales in the airspace with that 370 nautical mile range might make Russia think twice about any type of strategic nuclear attack, knowing that these Rafales themselves could be be carrying those nuclear cruise missiles that were recently tested by France. Or it could stir up the conflict with Russia thinking that they now have to launch some sort of a battlefield nuke. It could go one of two ways, and in this case, it would just be a wild scenario where all bets are off. Russia would be focusing on countering this strike with their S-400 Triumphs. Those S-400 Triumphs have a 250 nautical mile range. They can track 20 targets at 210 miles, and they've got a beast of a radar called the 91N6E. They couldn't come up with anything better than the 91N6E. Really? Can we get like a cooler name for this? Can we call it like the Vengeance? Anything but just that number conglomeration, please. Russia would also use their Pantsir S-1, which have a 12 nautical mile range, and those would be focused more on mixing in with a 30mm anti-aircraft gun that could then target drones that could be coming in from different NATO bases. And Ukraine's 2024 through 2025 strikes with their drones have exposed S-400 weaknesses to coordinated attacks, so it shows that the S-400 can be overwhelmed. And Ukraine showed the weaknesses of the S-400 by hitting different S-400 batteries in Crimea, showing that those things are susceptible to attack. And Russia might attempt to use the spray and pray method if their different radar systems are taken out. And it's essentially like their radar systems can't coordinate with each other as well as NATO's radar systems, so the spray and pray method might be what Russia actually resorts to. So the UK would be focusing on stealth and precision, and they'd be backed by NATO AWACS that would try to outmaneuver Russia's defenses. Those F-35Bs would dodge S-400s likely, and the Storm Shadows would hit hard, unable to be targeted by additional S-400s, which might be jammed or distracted by those F-35Bs. And here's the deal, NATO's got a lot of aircraft that would back the UK, so 22,377 aircraft are in NATO's arsenal, so that could back up the UK's, even though the UK would likely be holding their own with those F-35Bs. Let's break down 3 jet matchups, and I'll use my fighter pilot opinion to talk about how these jets would actually go up against each other. So first, let's talk about the Kings, the F-35B versus Russia's Su-57. So the F-35B's got an AN APG-81 radar that in an unclassified number sees out to about 80 nautical miles. Their stealth RCS radar cross-section is 0.001 square meters. That's insane, which is likely invisible to a lot of Russia's threats. The F-35Bs carry meteors that fire at about 124 nautical miles. The Su-57 is going to counter the F-35B with the Byelko radar, and that's said to be able to see up to about 150 nautical miles out. Who knows? Could they actually spot the F-35B? Let's say hypothetically they could spot them at about 50 nautical miles. That's going to be a little bit too late, and that Su-57 is going to already be schwacked in the face by the F-35's missile. And then the Su-57 is going to have that 0.1 square meter RCS and a K-77M missile, which can reach out to about 120 nautical miles. But as you can see in this matchup, the F-35B is going to fire first, and in this case, beyond visual range, stealth is going to win every day of the week. But let's say the gloves come off. You know I like to talk about dogfight scenarios. So the F-35's 25mm cannon, 480 rounds, can fire at 6,600 rounds per minute, and they've also got AIM-9X sidewinders with about a 12 nautical mile range, and most of all, a helmet-mounted display for 360-degree targeting. So the F-35B's #1 priority would be to use its 360-degree sensor suite to get an off-bore sight lock-on, with the pilot seeing this thing scream in from the side, getting that AIM-9X locked on, firing it, and then getting out of dodge as fast as possible. But if they got inside the phone booth, knife to knife with the Su-57, the Su-57 would likely out-dogfight it, just because of the ability of that Su-57 to do the different maneuvers it does, like the falling leaf, where it can just change the point of its nose and then fire whenever it wants to at that F-35B. So that would be a very tough scenario for the F-35B if they're unable to get an AIM-9X off, or if they're unable to get a shot off at the merge. Likely a pre-merge shot with the gun would be one of the best ways for the F-35B to protect itself against the Su-57. So the F-35B, in my opinion, would definitely win in a BVR beyond visual range scenario, but the Su-57 would take the advantage in a within visual range dogfight. And as you can see, here's a chart of the BVR missile ranges. So this is the Royal Air Force versus the Russian jets. So we'll talk mainly about the Meteor missile. You can see unclassified numbers show this thing can shoot out to about 125 nautical miles, and the K-77 carried by the Su-57 can shoot out to about 120 nautical miles, and then the R-77 carried by the Su-35, that one likely can reach out to about 60 to 70 nautical miles. So in this case, beyond visual range, the Meteor is going to slightly take the edge, but it's really going to be determined by which jet can see the other jet first. And that brings us to this radar detection range chart. So you can see the F-35B looks like with an AN APG-81, the unclassified number is that I can see out to about 85, 90 nautical miles. The Typhoon has a Captor E radar, and it looks like that thing can see out to about 120 nautical miles. The Su-57, due to the open sources, looks like it can see out to the biggest range with its ASA radar, the Bayelka, and that's about 140 nautical miles. And then the Su-35 with the Urbis E, that's looking at about a 80 nautical mile range. So this is just an unclassified number breakdown of the different ranges that these different jets can see out to. So now let's talk about the matchup between the Typhoon and the Su-35. So as you can see from that detection range chart, beyond visual range, it's relatively equal, with the Typhoon having a little bit longer of a detection range, somewhere about 110 nautical miles compared to about 100 nautical miles for the Su-35. And the bigger stick for the Typhoon with that Meteor missile is mean that they're likely going to get a shot off first on the Su-35. But then once you get within visual range, these two jets are going to be very similar of a matchup, and really it's going to come down to the pilot's skill at this point. Which pilot can actually put their gun on the other jet first, that's who's going to win the day. So who has more training? Likely the NATO trained pilot. The Typhoon pilot is going to have slightly more training. However, if this Su-35 pilot happened to be the lucky penny who got a lot of the sorties and a lot of the training flights, then who knows, maybe they're going to be able to turn the gun on first before that Typhoon pilot. So I really think in this case it's going to come down to the skill of the pilots. So I'd say between the F-35, the Su-57, and the Typhoon versus the Su-35, they're close matchups, but I'm going to give the edge to NATO and the UK in this one, just due to the capability of the F-35 and the F-35's ability to be the king predator of the skies. So overall, could the UK hold off Russian attacks? I mean, Russia's got sheer numbers and they've got the ability to launch a massive amount of drones, but the UK has got the edge with the F-35s, their Typhoons, their Skysaber missile system. Those can outmatch Russia's jets most of the time, but it's really going to come down to what the UK has for drone protection. NATO's got 22,300 aircraft, but those aircraft might not all be able to show up and back up the UK. So the UK is really going to need to be able to take down the different drones that could be coming from Russia. And a lot of that would come down to advanced drone deterrence systems and whether the UK has different rocket tech that can start to take down drones as well. The US has started to outfit F-16s and F-15Es with anti-drone technology and laser-guided rockets. So is the UK actually doing that? That could mean the difference of their ability to defend against a Russian drone attack versus not being able to. And then if the UK needed to launch that counterattack, Russia's SAM systems are tough, but NATO's got those integrated systems. And then if you think about the UK's ability to integrate their F-35s with their different systems, they could overwhelm Russian SAMs and give the UK the ability for a counterstrike if they had to. So if the UK were to win this matchup, they would have to essentially put everything on the line and leave everything on the field. They'd have to have an immense amount of motivation. So what do you think? Do you think the UK could hold off that Russian attack? Do you think the UK could be successful if they had to launch a counterattack? Or could Russia even compete? Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And then the biggest compliment you can give me is just watch this video right here. It's teed up specifically for you, and it's the biggest compliment you can give to the channel is just to watch this video right here. I'll see you on this video right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, signing off.